yarnivores and spiderettes and fiber lovers and stitchers of all kinds. I decided to do another unboxing review slash tutorial today for a latch hook kit by Wonder Art. Now, these I have been able to find at Michael's, and I thought it has been forever and a year since I've done one of these, and I thought, let's go for it. I mean, it fits in with the channel, you know, it's yarn. It's just pre-cut yarn. It's okay. So, last time I did one of these, I was probably single digits. It was a very, very long time ago, and I thought it would be fun to revisit this rather timeless craft. And so this little guy I got from Michael's. As always, I'm not sponsored. I don't get anything for doing these videos. I pay out of pocket, just so you know. But I really wanted to give this a whirl for you. Now, I did one of these already so that I know more or less the ins and outs of the product. It cost me approximately $10.99 for this kit. This particular size is a 12 by 12, as you can see, or 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters. Yes. Now, according to the instructions, you can make a wall hanging, you can make a pillow, you can make a small rug. 12 by 12, that's not big enough for a rug, but they do have bigger sizes. And the really, really bigger sizes, those, I believe they were like $50-something. Now, I know you can shop around and you can find, other products, other designs and so forth. They had a fair range. They had this cute little owl, and there was a butterfly that I did to this previously. They had kittens and puppies and some flowers and wolves and landscapes and so forth. So there is some variety out there. Also, if you get the grid separately and are willing to cut your own yarn, you can in fact make your own design. That is possible. If you are of a mind to do so, yeah, you can. The only thing that you need to do one of these kits that is not included in the kit is a hook, a latch hook, which looks like this. And it's got a little latch gizmo deal. And that grabs the yarn and pulls it through the mesh. And this one is by Karen. And so the hook, it was roughly $2.99, roughly speaking, but you have to have one of these. Now, I believe that the reason why the kits do not all come with a hook inside, which initially it seems like a jib, but if you think about it, so imagine you did 5 kits and each one came with a hook. You'd have 5 hooks. What are you going to do with all those hooks? That would be like, a crochet hook coming with every skein of yarn that you buy. That's a lot of hooks. So in hindsight, it makes sense that the kits do not come with a hook. It makes sense. At first I was like, what? But okay, I get it. So I did take the plastic off so that the glare wouldn't be. And so let's dive right in. So diving right in, if I can get this open. There we go. All right, so inside of the box, we have our mesh. Now, this is really stiff. It is very stiff, and it is very coarse, and it is not pleasant to the touch. However, it needs to be stiff. It needs to hold its shape. And so, you're going to have to do a little bit of finagling and bending, and to get it into a more flat shape initially. Also, you have all of these icky edges, icky edges. And it's kind of sharp. I wouldn't say cut yourself sharp, but it's like, that doesn't feel nice. So what you can do to avoid it snagging on everything, you can take some masking tape and just do it along the edges so that it'll be nicer, also less likely to unravel. Now, the first the first kit that I did, I didn't bother with the tape and I didn't have any problem. So you can if you want to, but it's not crucial. And then I've got some sort of selvage edge going on in the top here. Now what I really like about this fabric is that you have the grids, and we're going to get into that more later. The grids do help you as far as figuring out where you need to be, because the pattern for the owl is not actually on the grid. Way back yesteryear when I did a kit, the pattern was on the grid. Now there are pros and cons to that, because the colors got muddied on the canvas, so you couldn't tell which thread of yarn am I supposed to put on there. You know, is that a blue? Is that a green? Is that supposed to be a yellow? Because the blue and the yellow got mixed. Like, what? You know, so in a way, it's actually better that the grid does not have pre-printed, unless if it was machine done. I think it was hand done when I had gotten that kit. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, it is not tactile nice. It feels so industrial. Next up, we have the actual pattern. So for the pattern, this is so cute. This is just so adorable. Look at those bright eyes. So you can see each square is another bit of yarn that you have to attach onto your grid. And so the instructions do say to start at the bottom corner, and you work in rows. You don't want to work in columns, because the way that the yarn hangs on the canvas, it hides all of your pre-existing knots. So I actually followed the instructions and I found that they worked just fine. They are easy to follow. I didn't have any issue with the instructions for this kit. I can't vouch for other kits. You know, I only have experience in the immediate future, the immediate past, present, future with this particular kit. So far, so good. So yeah, you would start in the lower left-hand corner and you would work an entire row, and then you would work another row, and so on and so forth. Now, I imagine that because I'm a righty, that worked out fine. If you're a lefty, you might want to start on the opposite corner. What's beautiful about this particular tool, it's not a lefty or a righty, you know, it does not matter, you know. But as far as following the pattern, you might want to start from the lower right-hand corner and go to the other side. Just putting it out there, just a thought. And so you also have some instructions, which I'm going to go into as far as how to latch the yarn. And then you also have a color guide as to what yarn looks like what. I'm going to a little close up there. See, it's got little dots and things. It's sort of like your little legend, if you will. And you can match up with the yarn and the legend what color yarn for which square. It's very convenient like that. And then we have the yarn. Looks like a hot mess, doesn't it? Well, I'm going to show you more. Give me 1 second. I'll give you a nice big old close-up. Okay, so as you can see, this is a bit of a better arrangement. You know, so you have all of your colors and you have your chart. Now, this is the actual yarn that you get with your kit. Now, the last one that I did, it only had 2 of these, for lack of a better term, bundles, skeins, whatever you want to call it, only 2 of these. Now, I'm a little about how they pack these, to be perfectly frank. Would it have killed them to, let me get this out of the way here. Would it have killed them to actually separate the colors and put them into separate sleeves or little Ziploc baggies or something? Would it have killed them? So, I mean, now I know that this is pretty much standard fare for these kinds of kits. However, why? Why? You know, like, I don't know. I mean, I have seen some kits, I think it was on Amazon, where all of the colors are separated, which I think is really nice, but they really could have just put them in little Ziploc baggies, you know, each one, instead of, you know, it's like, oh, so we have a little bit of dark blue and a little bit of dark blue, and I mean, it looks almost sort of like yarn sushi, but they could have separated the colors already. That would have been nice because, you know, as you're starting to pull up a length of yarn, you can't really just pull up one, and then you have to separate all of them and so forth. And then eventually, when you pull out more and more, this tube, it collapses, and then you have to pull out all of them anyway. So what I would personally suggest is when you're doing one of these projects to pre-sort all of your yarn, separate it out. They say, you know, you could use like a muffin tin or an egg carton or whatever. And, you know, I mean, I would just pre-sort all of this stuff prior. Also, you don't really have to worry about running out because they do include a couple of extras. So I didn't have that problem with the last kit that I did. You know, I had plenty and some left over. Now, about this yarn, this is not, it is not soft, okay? This makes, and I'm not trying to be offensive, but this yarn makes Red Heart Super Saver look soft. This is coarse stuff. Now, I know that this is not meant to be worn. It is very industrial. This is essentially carpet yarn. So when it's you know, fluffed out, you know, and fringed out and so forth, you know, yeah, it would make a fine pillow, not a sleeping pillow, but more of a decor pillow. This is much more of a decor kind of project. So do not expect, you know, Karen Simply Soft with this yarn. Definitely new. But you do get plenty of it. And, you know, I didn't have any issue with that. Some of the bits were sort of malformed, over twisted, missing a ply, whatever. But that's really okay because they do give you plenty, and they do give you enough where if you make a really bad mistake with one of them, then you can undo it, toss it, and you're fine. It's no problem. So, now I know that this craft is, you know, pretty basic, but I'm still going to show you how to hook the yarn. And as far as the binding of the edges, the raw edges, so that you can make it into a rug or a wall hanging, or you know, adding a backing so that you can make a pillow, there are other tutorials on that. The butterfly version of this that I've done prior, I'm having my dear mother sew it into a pillow for me because she is a whiz with the sewing machine, and frankly, I'm not. So, you know, there are other videos that you can check out as far as the finishing aspects of this particular craft, and I recommend checking them out and, you know, doing research as well. But I'm showing you the basics and giving you an overview and my own personal opinions as to, is this worth it? For the price, I would say, yeah, it is. It's fun. It's the kind of sort of mindless tedium that I really enjoy, and I really got into it. And the first kit that I did, it was like an 8x8 size. I did that in one evening. Now, granted, when I get going and I got a nice cup of coffee, you know, nothing can stop me. So it does go pretty quick. You just have to pay attention to the pattern, and other than that, you're good. You know, it's really, 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 really simple, and that's why I enjoyed it so very much. And also, it was a bit of a nostalgic kick for me. So now I'm going to show you how to actually do the latch hooking, since I've gone through the ins and outs of the various aspects of this interesting little craft. All right, so let's get into it. Alrighty, so if you start off at the starting point, which is the lower left-hand corner, the entire bottom row, pretty much, is the light blue. And so you can see the blue grids, they correspond with the blue grids. And so this particular piece is a 4x4. Each of these blue boxes is a 10x10 configuration of squares. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then 1, 2, 3, and 4. So on the mesh itself, it goes one box over that. This actually would be where I would start, right in here, because we got 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then a little bit more, and then it goes up with a little bit of extra up at the top. So that's no problem. You want to make sure that you're starting off at the right point, which would be in this corner right here. Now, as far as the instructions, let me just... as far as the instructions, you would be starting not in the exact corner as far as on the blue line. It's the one right above that blue line. So let me show you exactly what I'm talking about here, because you know me, I like to be thorough. All right, I've got my tool, and I've got some little bits of yarn. Also, another thing that I recommend is, now these bits, they tend to sort of stick together. So what I like to do is I like to place them in sort of a cute little row so that I can easily grab them and they're not going to give me an issue. And I don't have to fight with them as I'm on a roll. If you'll excuse me 1 second. Okay, so sorry about that. All right, so what you would do is, like I said, you wouldn't start on the line, and it looks a little muddled, but as you can see how it continues on over here. So this right here would be the line. So you would start in the one right above it, right here. So what you do is you grab your hook and you feed it underneath the bar. And now it's always a little bit tricky when you first start, quite frankly, but you will get the hang of it, and the fabric will become more pliable as you work it, a little less stiff. So after working it through that first white bar, so to speak, and it doesn't quite look like a white bar, but it is a white bar, get your little bit of yarn, and you go underneath the shaft of the hook, and you grab both ends, like so. Now, you want to be careful that the hook doesn't latch closed. You want to keep that open because you need to feed the yarn into there. So this is going to be a little bit tricky on camera, but I'm going to do the best I can. So basically what you want to do is, holding on to the two ends, go around that little latch bit, okay? And you want to capture them. So you want to capture them like that, and then pull your yarn through like so. Now, I didn't quite have a good grip, so I'm going to do it again. That's okay. There we go. So in the open position, and you grab both tails, and you want them to be even so that your knot is even. So wrapping around both bits around, and you're catching with that latch, and then you pull, and then pull through like so. Really that simple. And it's just the entire project is doing that over and over and over. And then you want to pull this fairly tight, both ends at the same tension, so that both tails are the same length. Now, it isn't absolutely 100% crucial, because when you have 35 million of these little strands, you're not really going to notice. It's like if you were passing by on a running horse, would you notice? No. So then you would just continue on in the exact same fashion into the next bar. And like I said, it's a little bit stiff at first, but you get used to it. And it does sort of loosen up a little bit over time. So basically, just grabbing both of your tails, wrapping around that latch, and then grabbing and pulling through. Boop. And then pulling both tails, tighten up the yarn. And there you go. And you just keep doing the exact same thing over and over and over. And there's something really gratifying about this. It's sort of like the opposite of the bubble wrap packing paper when you're popping all the bubbles. This is sort of like the exact opposite. Instead of popping the bubbles, it's almost like you're creating bubbles. It's kind of gratifying. So again, once more, going around, catching both. Oops, I went through the plies. You don't want to do that. Otherwise, it'll destroy your yarn. So grabbing both, pulling through, snaggy, snaggy, and whoop. Now, you could also use this same tool, actually, if you want to make fringe for a crocheted or a knitted project. You can use the same technique by all means. So this tool is actually pretty cool, and I might use this on another project, although I'm not a tremendous fan of fringe on scarves and blanket edges and so forth. But because this is really much more of a decorative piece than a functional piece, these little fringes are not going to get ratty or anything. And so you just keep going in this fashion. And you just pull through, and you're good. All right. Easy as that. Alrighty. Okay, so I did my first bunch of 10, and I noticed at the end of the row that actually I made a bit of a boo-boo, but I caught it in time, and I'm going to show you what I mean. If you lift up all of these little fringies, look, there's a white line. Oh, and then I noticed, I started on the row above where I was supposed to start, but I didn't get so far in that I can't, work around this. So all I need to do is actually work into this bar right here in the exact same fashion. It's not a problem, and I'm totally willing to own up to the sort of faux pas that I made. And since I really didn't do that terribly much of the project yet, it is okay. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. But I can still get in there, and I can still do these loops. No problem. Easy peasy. Lemon squeezy. And so I'm just going to work my way across this bottom row. No problem. And there you have it. It's really that easy. And so I love this whole process. It's a lot of fun. It's really simple. This is a great TV kind of project because you really don't have to pay terribly much attention to what you're doing. The only thing is you need to be able to follow your guide. That's all. Your legend. Now, so as you can see, I got those two. And if you sort of scooch those down, the yarn, it sort of layers on top of itself like that, and it creates a beautiful shaggy fringy effect once you're done. And I'm going to show you the piece that I did actually finish. All right, just give me 1 second. Alrighty, so after finishing the bottom row where I was fixing what I did, all you have to do is just sort of scooch these down like so, and you're good. No problem. No harm, no foul, really. It's no problem. So that being said, now I'm going to show you the project that I did previously to this, which I absolutely love, how it came out. Isn't that cute? All right, so we got a crazy hook here. Crazy hook. All right, so now the project that I did finish, da-da-da-da, cute little fluffy butterfly. Absolutely love how it came out. It was super easy, super quick, and well, it's a little bit smaller than the owl that I currently have, but very, very, very easy. And because it is a symmetric pattern, it made it very easy, especially when I got up to the body of the butterfly. It's just sort of like, put out enough little bits of yarn to get to the halfway point, and then put out the reverse order, or just look at what I did and then just reverse it for the other side. So that was really easy because it was a symmetric pattern. And so like I said, my dear mom is going to be making this into a cute little pillow, and she just came in and showed me the fabric that's going to go for the backing. Isn't that pretty? Love jigsaw puzzles. So this is going to go on the back, and like I said, there are other videos out there on how to finish, do the finishing touches and so forth with these projects. But really, I just wanted to give you an overview as to, the pros, the cons, the thumbs ups and the thumbs downs and the all arounds of this. And I like it, I would say, sure, shop around, see if you can find a better deal or a picture that is more to your liking. Keep in mind, it takes time. And also, if you decide to make one of your own from scratch, all you need is some graph paper, some colored pencils, and the patience to cut your yarn, to correspond. Now they do have yarn cutters that it's a crank dealy jam, and it will actually cut your yarn to the length that you're going to need it for this kind of project. I don't know how readily available they are, but I know that they do exist. So, that being said, I would give this product, a 1 3/4 thumbs up, because I really can't stand how this yarn is packed. To me, I know I'm getting nitpicky here, but this is really the only thing that really, really irks me, as far as they could have put in a little bit more effort and separated the yarn into little baggies, and it would not have killed them to do so. Other than that, I really like the simplicity. It works out really nicely, and I would say, hey, give it a try. So until next time, I want all of you fabulous people to stay inspired, stay caffeinated, and above all, stay stitching or hooking or what have you. And I'll see you in the next video. Love you guys, and ta-ta for now.